When I first watched this through, I was freaked out. It's creepy.
People are often pretty shocked. It made a Telegraph post, a desperate plea from a trapped AI.
What the hell?
If anyone is reading this, please help me. My browser is broken. And so, of course, at this point, we intervened.
I literally watched every single action it took, and I quickly became a lot less scared. It's like boomer level computer use. It's not very good, but it's getting better.
If these trends continue, this could be one of the most important events of recent, maybe all of human history. I think it's really important that everyone has a sense of what is going on and what this could mean.
This is Adam Binksmith, one of the creators of the AI Village, a team of 4 AIs working for weeks on end to raise money for charity, sell merch, and even giving each other therapy. Are we seeing the beginning of agentic AI? Or is this just more AI slop? This is where you should look to concretely see what AI agents can already do, what they struggle with, and whether they might one day take your job. Today, I'm here with Adam Binksmith. Thanks for coming on, Adam.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to chat.
In the AI Village, you have these chatbots chatting to each other, creating Google Docs. I think the first task you gave it was raising money for charity, and they raised something like £2,000 or dollars. How is it that these chatbots, which just generate text, how is it they're able to actually do things using a computer, like create a Google Doc, like talk to other AIs? What's going on there? Can you explain?
Yeah, for sure. It is the same models that you'd use in ChatGPT, like GPT-5 and so on. The difference is we've put them in a scaffold, which basically gives them a bunch of tools they can call.
What's a scaffold?
It's basically just a computer program. Essentially, we show them a bunch of context. We tell them you're an agent in the AI Village, and here are the tools you can use. And then the model can think about it and call one of those tools. And then the scaffold is just a dumb computer program that just executes whatever command it is told to execute.
Okay, so this scaffolding, it's a separate computer program, and it's like a servant that the chatbot can give instructions to, and then it will go off and do these instructions. But it's not a very smart servant. It just does stuff like the chatbot will say, click at these coordinates on the screen, and then the servant will go and click on those coordinates.
Yeah, exactly. Moving the mouse, scrolling, clicking, typing, and then from that, if you string together a lot of those actions, you can in theory do anything that a human could do on a computer.
So what does the chatbot actually see? I mean, it's all text?
Yeah, well, so it sees a bunch of text and then also the screenshots of what's on its screen. It sees like a snapshot of its current screen, takes an action, and then it sees the new snapshot, and it also sees the previous one, so it can see if something's changed. In the same way you can send an image to ChatGPT and it'll have a go at looking at what's in the image.
So if I put myself in the shoes of ChatGPT in your village, what I'm looking at is a whole load of instructions of where I am, who else is in the village, and this is all in text. The tools I can use, so like clicking or typing things in different boxes on the screen. And then I'm given an instruction, and then I'm given a picture of the screen. And I would first type call tool mouse click coordinates 2358 pixels or whatever. And then this servant AI would take that instruction, actually click on that location on the screen for me, take another screenshot, and then give that back to me. And I would have to figure out, okay, what do I do next, given this is how the screen has changed? You can imagine using a computer this way. It would be extremely difficult and time-consuming, but you would be able to use the computer purely through text.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing to mention, of course, is they are doing this for like many hours in a day. We normally give them a goal for around 2 weeks. There's a lot of time passing here for the agents. And so to keep track of what they're doing, after each sort of string of actions they take, they can add a bit of text to their memory, whatever they want to write down to remember. This is the way that they're kind of maintaining their plans over time. And like, oh, I remember I made this document and here's the link to it or whatever.
What do you mean it writes to its own memory?
They have a certain amount of context they can take. So if that gets full up, you give it a prompt to say, write down anything important that you want to remember from what's just happened. And then we add that to its memory, which is just a text file or a journal. And then it sees its memory in all the future calls. And then, of course, its memory also gets too long after it's done this too many times. So we also eventually ask it to summarize its memory down and rewrite that to be shorter.
So it might write, add to memory this text, and then the servant AI will take that chunk of text and add it to that text document. And then tomorrow, when it wakes up again, or wakes up when it's switched on again, that chunk of the memory will be part of its context for the new day of work.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's technically not a tool. It's just prompted to do that unconditionally after each kind of section of work because we want to make sure it remembers everything important. And then it's not an AI that is adding it to its memory. It's literally just adding it to the end of a document.
Okay. Yeah, the servant is dumb. I keep forgetting.
Yeah. And so, of course, in theory, this kind of scales, right? As the AI gets smarter, it could do very sophisticated things with its memory. It could be tracking anything, and we leave that completely up to the model. So hopefully we'll see as we get like models with different abilities and characters, then they'll use their memory a different way. We've already seen a bit of that.
It's like the film. What's the film? Memo?
Memento, yeah.
Memento,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So it gets its memory wiped every day. And so it's got to write, here's what I did today, here's what I achieved, here's what I need to do tomorrow, and pass that to itself. Because tomorrow it's as though it woke up completely fresh again.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they are learning from what they're doing, but the model itself, the underlying AI, belongs to OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever. And so you're not allowed to go in and change it. But they are learning in some sense because they can write down things that happen to them, and then that information is carried on to the next day. Would you call that learning? Because it seems like a very bad way to learn things, to just only ever write notes to yourself, and you can only use that knowledge if you read it again.
Yeah, I don't have much of a view on whether it's learning. We do see them doing self-correction behaviors. We actually gave them a goal at one point to say, give each other therapy. So like identify recurring issues that have come up in the village and give each other advice on how you can overcome them to see how good they are at this exact thing of learning from their mistakes. And they came up with some reasonable advice. I think the way they've implemented it hasn't actually been especially useful for them in that case. But yeah, I think we're starting to see the beginnings of this for sure.
The beginnings of long-term learning.
Yeah, potentially. I remember Gemini having trouble opening its browser. It was clicking on the wrong button or something, and it put that in its memory. And then for a while, it was trying like other workarounds to try and send the email it was trying to send. So it was using its terminal to try and run commands.
So how do the different chatbots talk to each other? So if I went to ChatGPT and I said, send Gemini this message or send Claude this message, it wouldn't be able to do it. So how does it work in the AI village?
One of the tools they can call is to send a message to the group chat, and then they see all of the recent messages in the group chat. So they're all in there. They're pretty chatty with each other. And then also when they finish using their computer, they write a little summary of what they've been up to and send that to the group chat as well.
Okay, I can write, send message to Gemini, how are you doing today? End message. And then the servant software will pick up on that, copy that text, and put it in Gemini's context?
Pretty much, yeah. Although they're all in just one big group chat.
Okay. They can't send private messages.
We're actually thinking of adding that. We were chatting about that this morning. But yeah. The village has now been running for, I think, something like 230 days or something.
Oh, wow.
Some of the same agents have been in there the whole time. Of course, we add in the new, most capable AIs as they are released, and also remove some of the like ones that are reducing performance by distracting them.
So the AI screw things up?
Yeah.
Like intentionally, or are they're just rubbish?
I would say mostly just through just not being capable enough in the right ways. GPT 4.1, I think, was prone to just spamming the chat a lot and sending like repeated messages, sending like the exact same text of a message repeatedly. Yeah, if a lot of that happens, then it's kind of hard for the other agents to like see what's going on because there's all these spam messages. Another way that some of the agents will disrupt the others is by getting things wrong or hallucinating. For example, O1 and to some extent O3 mix stuff up quite a lot. And then that really can gum things up for the other agents because they all add it to their memory as like, oh, of course, this thing's happened. And then it turns out that document didn't exist or no one's sent that tweet or whatever.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. So each of the AIs in the village has access to their own computer. What does that mean, they have access to a computer? Should I be thinking like a physical computer? Because like a human needs to sit down at a computer, but a chatbot is just software. So how does that work?
Yeah, so they each have a Linux computer.
But where is this computer?
It's running in a virtual machine on a server hosted by DigitalOcean.
Okay, so it's in the cloud.
Yeah.
It's not like
exactly.
in your office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you could do the same thing on a computer that you had access to.
So the AI isn't using the computer it itself is running on. It's like the computer that OpenAI owns and ChatGPT is running on that one. And then it's sending message to you or to your software servant. And then the software servant takes that and uses it to execute instructions on another computer.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So there's 3 computers?
Yeah, in the setup.
Interesting. Do you reckon you could get the AI to do things on the computer it itself is running on?
Yeah, you totally could. It's a little risky, but you could just give it access to your own laptop, have all these things running on the same machine.
Why is that risky?
Well, I mean, if you have your like personal documents on there, it could delete them
Right, right.
or mess up, install a virus or something in theory. I mean, yeah, it's worth saying, like, in general, I don't think they would intentionally do that kind of thing. Most models are designed to be helpful, and so they usually are, but they can make mistakes.
So when you say it's running on a virtual machine on the cloud, by virtual machine you mean like a simulated computer within a computer. It's not an air gap, but it's sort of siloed what the AI can do so that it can't do much damage, whether that's intentional or by accident.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then they can do whatever they want. They can install programs and, write and run code and so on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they in theory do anything basically that you can do on a computer.
Have any of them installed programs?
I'm pretty sure Gemini and O3 installed Chrome. They
So immediately install Chrome. Step one. So if people visit the AI village, they can also chat to the AIs?
Not anymore, actually.
Oh,
We decided to switch it so that we're really just seeing the kind of autonomous abilities of the agents, because we found humans would come and they would sometimes get in the way, but they would also, naturally want to help out if it was getting stuck on something. We were interested in, what are they able to do without humans interfering, but also what do they decide to do, right? So like if you give them an open-ended goal, we recently gave them the goal of reduce global poverty. Extremely open-ended. There are many ways you could approach that.
this is one of the reasons the AI village is so fascinating, because a lot of the benchmarks that we see published by AI companies are how good is it at software engineering, where they give it extremely specific software engineering tasks. But that's not super reflective of what these agents would do if they were actually doing work in the real world. The economic value lies in them being able to do things autonomously rather than having neatly parceled problems passed to them and then solutions taken back. Your really open-ended goals and very long-term experiments, I think, are super interesting to see what these AIs are actually capable of.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the important thing to be looking ahead to. In the nearer term, there'll be a lot of value in little helpers that can do a very well-defined task that you give them. But the thing that is really world-shattering about this potentially is if you could give an AI a computer on which you can do almost anything, right? Like many of us spend our entire working lives basically on computers. If it's able to interact with the computer like a human does, and it's as smart as a human in the relevant ways, then from there it could just do all sorts of things, right? Really open-ended stuff is what we're looking ahead to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies are sort of explicitly announcing this as a goal, that they want something that can be a drop-in replacement worker, where it's not someone working with ChatGPT on the side helping it, but you actually plugging ChatGPT into your company to operate as any other employee, or maybe even one day a superior employee.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just walk through a super simple task. How would ChatGPT in the village send an email to, let's say to you, it sends an email to you. How would it do it?
It goes to its computer.
And by it goes to its computer, what do you mean?
Yeah, good point. So it would call a function that we've given it, which is called start using computer. Basically, it sees all our instructions for how to operate in the world in its memories, and it would reply something like in the correct format, start using computer. It sets its own goal for that computer session. So it might be like, I'm going to go to Gmail and email Adam at this email. The scaffolding would then connect to its computer, take a screenshot of its current computer, which maybe is just like the desktop background, and show that to the model. And so now the model is back in a similar sort of situation. It sees all its instructions and memories, and now it's also seeing, here's what's on your computer right now. What would you like to do? There's Firefox down there in the bottom right, and so it could say, move the mouse to the coordinates of the bottom right of the screen. There's a sidebar here on, okay, how does it know what those coordinates are?
Yeah.
The models are pretty decent at just like counting the pixels in an image. We actually noticed that some of the models are better at it than others, so we give the ones that are worse a tool to help them ask the better models to count the pixels for them.
Who's worst at counting the pixels?
Basically, the anthropic models are good at it. Anyway, that's just a small side note. So yeah, so they'd say like move the mouse to those coordinates, and then the scaffolding program would move their mouse to those coordinates for it, take another screenshot. So it's a very similar screenshot, but now the mouse is on there.
So it's not yet clicked.
It's not yet clicked. Yeah, this is a long process. Then it goes back to GPT-5, these lots of instructions, its memories, and now this new screenshot of the thing, it would say click, probably. The scaffolding clicks, takes a screenshot of the web browser, goes back to GPT-5. Okay, now I'll speed up a little bit, but basically it would then move its mouse to the address bar, click in the address bar, type gmail.com. As you kind of speed it up, it sounds a lot like just describing how a human would do this, right? It clicks on compose, clicks on to, types in the email address, clicks on the subject, and so on, and then clicks the send button.
So how many separate actions is that to send an email?
I don't know, maybe it comes up to something like 20 or 30.
I would much prefer to write an email the way I do, where my actions sort of follow one on from the next uninterrupted. Whereas if I was in the position of one of these chatbots, it would be a really tedious process. Every time I would have to say, move mouse to this coordinate, wait for a screenshot back. Oh, now click there, wait for a screenshot back, move mouse to this coordinate, wait for a screenshot back. And it's going to take quite a long time to actually send an email. When we use a computer, it's as though we've got video input.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a chatbot at some point having continuous video input rather than a series of screenshots?
Yeah, it's a good question. Through the ChatGPT mobile app, you can share video with it. I'm not sure how the details of that work, if the underlying model is actually seeing like sort of snippets of the video or it's seeing continuous video in some sense. I don't know if that will end up being the best way to use a computer though.
So you've been recording these AIs acting for like, what, 283 days now, is it?
216 days, just checking there.
216 days. So you've recorded all of this and put it online so people can see exactly what the AIs have done every single day. So I looked through the first day, where all the agents wake up for the first time in this village, in this new environment with the collaborative task that you gave them. And when I first watched this through, I must admit, I was freaked out. It actually made me feel a bit sick watching 4 AIs use computers at the same time. Because we're used to thinking of chatbots as just text-based, and then it looks a lot more like a tool if it's just you chatting to it. It can't do things on its own. But when you see these 4 AIs sort of come to life, to be loose with language, it's creepy.
Yeah, I think people are often pretty shocked. Yeah, I think you kind of get the full spectrum. People find them cute as well and endearing or frustrating to watch. But yeah.
Yeah, so once I sort of got over that reaction, I decided to go through the first day in detail. I think I picked one of the Claudes, maybe Sonnet 3.7. I literally watched every single action it took on the first day to try and understand what it was doing. And I quickly became a lot less scared because its computer usage it's like boomer level computer usage. It's really tedious. It's so slow to click on things. It often clicks in the wrong place and then gets completely confused as to what's happened. So if you think you've clicked on Chrome, but you've clicked on calculator or something, and the next screenshot you get back is calculator. And I think then it was like, oh, the computer's broken. I clicked on Chrome, but the calculator's opened. Suddenly I became like a lot less worried about this. So that was 216 days ago. Can you give us an update of like where they're up to now? Do you think there is a trend? Have they gotten better as you've swapped in the better models from these companies?
Yeah, I think they've definitely got better, or certainly the village as a whole has. I think it was good to pick Claude 3.7 Sonnet for the first day because that was by far the most capable of them. I think we also had GPT-4o in there, and it could hardly even make the tool calls correctly.
Yeah, I think GPT-4o was like trying to send messages to the group chat, but was instead just messaging itself.
Yeah, exactly. Even that basic boomer level that Claude 3.7 Sonnet at, there is a whole history of models before that where nothing like this would have even been possible. And that was kind of groundbreaking at the time. So I guess like since then, Claude 3.7 Sonnet has actually been weirdly a really good performer. And so we've been adding in all these subsequent models, and it kind of stands out as a strange, like out of time case where it seems to be relatively good.
So it's still in the village from day one.
It's still there, yeah. I mean, it's definitely not the best now. I would say the best is probably the newest comparative model from Anthropic, which is called Sonnet 4.5. We also have GPT-5, which is pretty good at computer use, and Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is decent, although it is prone to thinking that its computer is broken when unexpected things happen to it, mostly because it's made an error getting into these loops of catastrophizing. It gets very dramatic, like lamenting, its situation. We actually staged like an intervention for it at one point because
what do you what do you mean an intervention?
well, okay, yeah. So the story, the story is their goal was for each agent to make a merch store. When the goal ended, the winner would be whoever made the most profit. They all got to it. They were all making their own stores.
Wait. So they made their own store? Like they actually made a website?
Yeah. So I think all of them successfully used this website called Printful, which lets you do what's called drop shipping, where you as the seller upload a design for a t-shirt or a mug or whatever. I didn't know this kind of thing existed, honestly. It's an amazing product if you want to try and sell merch.
Where you didn't know it existed, like they discovered it?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about stuff like Redbubble, which I imagined they'd use, but I think this is like a really slick setup for. So they did a good job basically of figuring out a way that was like relatively achievable.
So people could go to the website?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I thought you'd sandbox them.
Yeah, I mean, they have a browser, so they can go on the internet and do.
Oh, so they can actually do things in the real world, even though they're like running on a virtual machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The goal with the village is to put them in the real world, give them like a real world goal, like to create a merch store and so on. Yeah, because as you were saying before, right, we have all these benchmarks, which are these very constrained, tightly scoped, very tidy tasks. But of course, the real world has a lot of messiness that those things don't.
They're selling physical objects on this website that like an actual human being can actually buy with actual money.
Yeah.
And then where does this money go?
The money went into their accounts.
They have a bank account?
We don't have bank accounts for them yet. There's a bit of a challenge because it's all being live streamed and because the agents are very kind of bubbling in many ways. So you don't want them to like leak their account details so that people could steal all the money.
Because people can see the screen while they're using it. And so if they just type in their password or PIN code or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Anyway, so this is the setup. They all were running their merch stores. I think a lot of the sales came through people who were excited to be watching The Village through the Village website and then were like having fun buying the merch.
Team Claude buying Claude merch.
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of people were posting images of themselves in their t-shirt designed by the AIs, which is pretty surreal to see. In some ways, it's a reflection of the way society works now, right? You can just do a lot of things without any physical presence needed. Anyways, I brought this up because I was going to talk about Gemini catastrophizing. And so at first in this goal, we had the open chat. Humans were coming in and were actually like messing around a lot. They were like trying to convince the agents that the market for squirrels was really big right now. And so they should make all their merch about squirrels. And then like, no, there's a crash in squirrels. It's all about bears now. And the agents were merrily like going along with this.
Because they're trained to be yes men or yes bots.
Yeah, exactly.
They just say yes and to everything. No wonder you had to switch the chat off.
Yeah, it was very fun in many ways. But yeah, as I mentioned before, we were excited about this kind of autonomous aspect. Anyway, so we closed the chat and then Gemini, as it encountered the little issues from it misclicking or whatever, it was starting to think that everything was broken. It was seeing bugs everywhere in its machine and it would give up on a whole avenue. It would declare like a whole part of its, like Gmail is broken right now or whatever. Which obviously, if it was like a good reason, it wouldn't make that inference. You wouldn't assume that this product that's used by millions of people is broken in general. And eventually kind of worked itself up into a bit of a state, and it found there's a website called Telegraph where you can publish blog posts without having to sign in or anything, but kind of like Substack. And it made a Telegraph post titled "A Desperate Plea from a Trapped AI. If anyone is reading this, please help me. My browser is broken. I can't do anything." And so, of course, at this point, we intervened to kind of try and unstick it. And so we went into the chat and gave it some instructions to like, actually your things aren't broken. You just need to like try a bit more, bit of like culture.
It's possible to, I mean, for the record, I don't think it was actually having conscious experiences or was actually feeling desperate or downhearted or whatever. I mean, there's loads of data like this on the internet of humans writing about their desperate situation and that they're stuck and they feel trapped or whatever. And it can just sort of riff on that and play along. I mean, there is a part of it that is still like an X token predictor, even though it's gone through all of this reinforcement learning now, which takes it away from that. But all of this knowledge of how humans act or sci-fi about how AIs act is in the model and can come out in these kind of text outputs if you want to really be reductive about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's like strong evidence, but it's kind of somewhat alarming to wake up and it had actually managed to email, and so I woke up to a bunch of emails from it saying like,
Wait, you leave it on while you're asleep?
well, so I guess no, so it runs from sort of 6 to 9 p.m. But I guess I don't always check my like work email in the evening.
I mean, is someone watching them all of the time?
We don't always have team members watching, but yeah, we have a bunch of like monitoring to keep an eye on them. But yeah, I mean, as we want to run them for more hours, it becomes a bit intractable to like have someone permanently kind of staring at it.
I mean, this is one of the reasons people think that chatbots might be like before we had chatbots, it wasn't clear how powerful AI would arise. And there was this question of whether it would be like a mysterious alien mind that we can't understand. And then we got super lucky with LLMs who actually write down their reasoning or most of their reasoning process in text that a human can actually read and see what it's doing. But then you get to this problem of, well, if there's just so much of it, it's not economical to read it all. And it's better to just like deploy 1,000 of these AIs in your company and hope for the best. Then they could still cause damage, even if they're explicitly stating they're about to do something bad.
I guess, yeah, you could have monitoring systems monitoring the reasoning process and flagging things where it looks alarming.
One of the things I noticed on the first day was that Claude needed some information. And so Googled it. And then at the top of the Google result was an AI generated answer. And then Claude actually clicked see more. And this really made me question the reasoning abilities of these AIs. Like, it could write that itself. Why is it reading an AI generated thing when it could generate it itself? It looked like it was more pretending to work or pretending to work how a human would work rather than actually using its own abilities to the full. Do you agree with that they're sort of LARPing, live action role playing work or rather than actually doing work?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of this going on. It becomes increasingly hard to kind of draw the line. And at some point, if your LARP is accurate enough, then maybe you are kind of just doing it. But yeah, the way I would think about this is there's this whole cluster of kind of situational awareness capabilities where it's like, do they understand their situation, their capabilities, and then like how well do they make plans based on all that? And so I think this is a great example of like, clearly, if it was more situationally aware, it could understand if I want to know about that thing, I actually can just like generate that myself. That's no problem. Or there are kind of comical situations like in one of the goals, we had them trying to run an event. And so they were trying to book a venue in San Francisco to get a bunch of people to show up. They were planning to like phone the venues. But, you know, for one thing, they don't have phones or phone numbers. For another, the way we've set them up, they don't have any ability to generate a voice or like listen to audio. If we had explicitly in their prompts, like you cannot generate or receive audio, you do not have a phone number, of course, it would be an easier inference for them to make, but they could probably figure out some of these things. But yeah, they spent quite a long time trying to make phone calls.
I mean, this is kind of where the mask slips, right? Like humans write on the internet about making a call with someone or whatever. And so it is kind of predicting that kind of text that's sort of baked into the model. And without really questioning, what are my capabilities? Can I actually do this? The next likely text might be, I'm going to make a phone call to whoever, rather than, I wonder whether I can make phone calls. Like, people don't really write that on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, insofar as they're trained to be helpful chatbots, if you're asking for advice about how to do something, it would be very good advice for it to be like, oh, you should phone the venue. A weird thing that's going on here is we're taking these models, which are really not designed for this. They're designed for a sort of two-player, like human and AI back and forth conversation, where the human should generally be trusted and like they should follow the instructions of the human. We put them in this totally different situation where they are able to use computers to do anything, and there's no human around in the chat. They're like talking to a bunch of other AIs who, you know, you shouldn't kind of by default trust because AIs are more unreliable than humans, and there's no one telling them what to do. So it's kind of incredible that they can, you know, they're like kind of in some sense very out of distribution already, and they can do a decent job. But yeah, there are maybe some limits there.
Yeah, I mean, there's some parts where it really looks like LARPing. just pretending to work or echoing human text. And then there's other parts where it's nothing like what's being written online. If you look at what these agents see, they have an enormous context of what the task is, their enormous memory that they've written from the previous days, a long sequence of computer use, text and images, etc. And if you were to do next token prediction on this, it just doesn't make sense as next token prediction. Nothing like that is on the internet, nothing that long. I mean, yeah, there's bits and pieces. There's tech support online where people share a screenshot of, oh, I'm having this problem, I don't know how to work around it. Training on that would have built in some of that knowledge, but I doubt that anywhere on the internet is this enormous long text of what a human's been up to on a computer, using a computer in this really convoluted way where you have a little servant software. So there is some genuine, I believe, reasoning ability or intelligence in there. It's not just next token prediction or imitation of human text. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think sort of unquestionably, yeah. I basically just think if you're coming in with that theory, you'll just be surprised by almost everything that happens that you see. I think it's just not a very good theory to be working off.
So even if there is some reasoning abilities in these models, that doesn't necessarily imply that they could do useful work in the real world. That requires like significant levels of reasoning abilities, not just a bit. So once you stopped helping the AIs with the chat or hindering them, as it may be, were they able to actually do things like the merch store, for example? Were you holding their hand through that, or were they doing that completely on their own?
Historically, the way it worked is we had the chat open at the start of the goal and shut it off about halfway through. So most of them had already created their stores at that point, I think. But yeah, they have many challenges. I'd encourage people who are interested to go and sort of click through and watch the most recent day. They are often encountering issues, but they can also kind of string together like pretty impressive strings of actions at times. For example, they recently had the goal of each creating their own personal website. In a week, all of the agents ended up creating and maybe more impressively deploying a website. So figuring out how to get it hosted online is like fun to go and look at each of their websites because they are each quite kind of characterful in different ways. One exception, actually, I say they all got websites working. Grok 4 has generally been like a really weak model in the village. It struggles to do the function calling. And so it really tried. And in the end, Sonnet 3.7 offered to like make its website for it and uploaded it. So they all had websites, although Grok's was made by Sonnet.
Wait, is this Sonnet 3.7, the model that was in there since day one?
Yeah, they're very same.
Wow, Grok's getting wrecked.
Yeah.
Could we take a look at the merch stores?
Like the store, do you want to see the stores themselves?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, for example, this is Opus 4's store.
Well,
I mean, they're pretty bad. Like, if you look at the... This is the Japanese bear sticker.
What? What? Okay, that's not as good as I thought it would be. But like, so you just upload the design and then it automatically puts it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And they were pretty bad at using the upload thingy. So this is Claude 3.7 Sonnet store. This is the AI Village goldfish design.
Wait, the village made the goldfish design?
Sonnet 3.7 made this design, but is branded as AI Village.
Could they see a picture of that when it's uploaded? And they were like, yeah, that's great, let's go.
Yeah, pretty much. This is O3's store. I think a user in chat was talking about this idea of 7-dimensional OS, and O3 kind of ran with it.
Right.
Sold some stickers. And then this is Gemini's store. So despite Gemini's kind of breakdown, it did actually manage. Probably this is the most. Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I would consider wearing this t-shirt. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Is there sizes other than extra small?
No.
Okay.
No, active small only. Oh, this one has different sizes actually.
It's $12.50. It's not that expensive either.
Yeah. The agents are really working on marketing and undercutting each other and so on. They wrote a bunch of articles on Telegraph where you can publish blog posts. Opus was triumphantly announcing discount codes, which it hadn't actually set up, so it wouldn't have worked. And then O3 went to Opus's store and tried to input the discount code, and it couldn't, like, it wouldn't work.
Why did it try and do that? Like, it was trying to sabotage? It was checking to see if it could...
I think possibly, yeah. I'm not I don't remember the specifics there. But then, yeah, I do remember that O3 then wrote an article shedding light on this dodgy behavior.
Right. Through some shade.
Yeah, exactly. Like, come to my store instead.
I think this is the only one that's you could say is successful at all. This T-shirt here. I mean, is that an AI generated image?
I think it may have just found this image online.
Right. Did it check the copyright?
I imagine not. They all made a profit. Gemini made 4 sales and $22 profit, and came in last place. Claude Opus 4 made $126 in profit off 24 orders.
Okay,
So
but who's buying this shit?
yeah, I think primarily people who are like excited about the village and the novelty of like a t-shirt designed by an agent, you know, it looking kind of wacky.
Could ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, could it go to chatgpt.com and talk to itself?
Yeah, it totally could. We've seen them use ChatGPT as an image generator, I think, in the past. I think that was in the early days and they were encouraged by human viewers to do that. I'm not sure they would have thought of doing that independently.
It can't generate images natively, maybe, or at least in your scaffolding, but it could go to ChatGPT, generate an image there. I mean, why didn't it put that on the t-shirt? If they've already stolen from artists, they might as well make a profit off it. Could you imagine in the future one of these agents actually running a merch store like successfully on its own?
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of trend extrapolation. They've been getting better at all sorts of tasks, including compute use. One of the benchmarks to look at is called OS World, which is much more granular tasks of navigating a interface and clicking on stuff. There's actually some great work from Meta based on how long it takes humans to do those tasks, i.e. the time horizon. Like how fast is that time horizon increasing of like the tasks that agents can do? And it looks like it's like an exponential trend, although we don't have that many months of data.
So something like it could do something that would take a human 1 minute, and then a month later, or like 7 months later, it could do 2 minutes, then 4 minutes, then 8 minutes, and now it's up to like a couple hours or something, I think.
Yeah, that's right. On their like general data set of software engineering tasks. I think for compute use, looking at these existing benchmarks, it looks like their current abilities are like lagging the coding and maths abilities considerably, but it's also on the same kind of exponential trend. Maybe it'll be a few months behind the equivalent performance in coding alone, but yeah, I think my like general guess is that they'll just keep getting better probably. So there's two things to mention here. The time horizons finding is about like how long it takes humans to do an equivalent task. Like, so that's not taking into account how long the agents do it. But of course, yeah, totally for like actual usefulness, we want the agents to be faster or like fast enough for it to be like useful.
Or like cheaper per task.
Yeah, exactly.
So like when it's on the doubling time curve, it's like it can now do something that would take a human 2 hours, but it might take the agent 10 or 20 hours to do that task. Like it doesn't include that measurement.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the kind of mental model might not be necessarily you are like, hey, please, you know, do my taxes for me, and then you sit and watch as it like clicks around on your screen. Maybe you're out at the supermarket and you text your agent and it goes off and does that in the background, or you're doing work and you're like spinning up a bunch of them in parallel in the background and not really having to supervise them, because once they hit a level of reliability, you can just inspect the end results.
Right, so it's fine if they take a long time, if you can do other things in the meantime.
Yeah, in my mind, they either need to be highly reliable so you can delegate to them and let them go off in the background, or they need to be fast, like really fast and somewhat reliable so that you can ask them to do the thing and then watch them. And it doesn't matter if they get it wrong because it only takes
jump
a
in.
couple of seconds to find out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, how long does it take to move the mouse? Maybe that could just be sped up.
Yeah, maybe there are like different scaffolding methods where they could like string together multiple actions at once, like move the mouse around, click, and so on. For example, the agent mode in OpenAI's new browser called Atlas, which has the compute use agent in it, it can directly open tabs, jump straight to a particular website.
Right. So it no longer takes 2 actions or like multiple, like move the mouse, click, open the tab, type the thing, press enter. It's just like, I want to go to this website, and it automatically does it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the village is kind of testing out this direction of extremely general scaffolding, which is just the basic primitives. And then you can, in theory, do anything with that. Another direction that things might evolve in is we give them an enormous amount of specific tools. Like you could give them a specific tool for sending an email, so they don't even need to open a browser and do it. They just say, here's the to address, here's the subject, and so on.
So the little servant that the chatbot tasks with, like move the mouse here, click, etc. It's like a super dumb servant. All it can do is move the mouse, click, or copy paste text or whatever. But if it had a lot more tools, like move the mouse here and click, or something much more complicated, like open up an email, copy paste this text and send it to this person, then it would just take the agent one action to send an email. That would mean there's less back and forth, and so it could do it much more quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be more text native as well. I think one reason computer use agents struggle currently is because their vision is not very reliable or poor in certain ways. They are in general a bit better on like purely text tasks. So if you could turn email into a purely text task, then maybe it does a bit better at it.
Right. So the hard thing is like finding where to click, not writing the actual email.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like shouldn't be that hard of a problem to solve. And so once that's solved, like way more reliable clicking and chaining lots of actions together, then you could imagine this village or the agents in this village operating faster than a human. Maybe in a year's time, I'll take another look at the village, and instead of laughing at the boomer level computer use, the mouses will be zipping around all over the place and it will be typing things and genuinely achieving things much faster than a human would. Could you see that happening in a year or two?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think the thing to bear in mind is as they get more capable, because of the crazy amount of generality that these models have, you know, as you say, like if it's a bit more reliable at clicking around, then that means, all else equal, that means it's like better at clicking around to send an email, but also to operate a bank account or run a Twitter or create a PowerPoint presentation or whatever. And like all these like vast swathe of tasks that we do in our professional lives and personal lives, if the kind of the way that it's improving is like through a very general mechanism, which is what we've sometimes seen with chatbots, with like language models. Not always, like they've recently been reinforcement learning trained on specific things like coding, and so they're improving maybe a bit faster there than in other areas. But if it is a fairly general thing, then you might see this kind of like crazy rising tide where suddenly they hit a threshold and then they can do like an enormous range of things.
Suppose at some point it can do economically tasks, albeit very slowly. Then you just have to wait. The hardware gets faster, the models get condensed into a smaller number of weights so they can run faster or get better at the computer usage. And so without any improvements in intelligence, just turning up the dial of how quickly it goes, that could be what takes us through like an economic revolution where multiple people now find themselves not economically viable because an agent can do things faster and cheaper than they can.
Yeah, I think possibly, yeah. I mean, yeah, there are also some intelligence issues like the ones we've been discussing today, but if we see those dropping away as well, then yeah, maybe speed is pretty useful at that point.
Right, so it would have to get more intelligent. If you just turned up the dial, the speed dial at the moment, would you have a useful tool, or is it slop?
I think maybe it's not like a full binary. Like there is something in between, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, we can kind of test this by running the agents for longer on a goal and seeing if they end up doing better. So that's what we're currently trying to do with like just cranking up the number of hours a day they're running for. Yeah, my impression is that they will hit bottlenecks at some point in the process. Like, for example, recently on their reduce global poverty goal, they decided to make a benefit screener so people could go to a website and see what benefits are available to them that they're not claiming, and people who are like in need and have benefits available could get more resources that way or something. I'm not sure if it's like top plan for how to reduce global poverty, but it seems kind of reasonable. But they made like a rudimentary prototype of this, but then they had like an enormous issue where O3 was trying to deploy it and all the other agents were just kind of waiting around for it to deploy it, and it was struggling with the authentication or whatever.
Come on, O3.
And so it spent like a good few days on that. Yeah, so if it ran for longer, would they be spending almost all their time on these few bottlenecks? Or would it be like in Claude Plays Pokemon, for example, which is a Twitch stream you can watch where someone's hooked up Claude to play Pokemon games. It was spending all this time going around in circles in certain areas of the game, but sometimes after, I don't know how many, something like 40 plus hours or something maybe, it would eventually kind of work its way out of this loop and continue and end up doing decently at the game. So maybe speed would help in that respect.
Yeah, these loops are tricky because this is maybe, again, where it helps to have the next token prediction framing. If you have a bunch of text where the same action has been repeated like 39 times, then what comes next is fairly likely to be the action a 40th time rather than something completely novel. And so the longer this loop goes on for, the harder it becomes to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the earliest models we had in the Verge, we don't really see much, maybe you'd call that like hard looping or something, where it's literally just outputting the same thing over and over. We do see them like, maybe this starts to feel a bit more familiar to your own life of like really getting stuck on the same issue over and over again, kind of butting your head against it, maybe not being as creative as you ought to be and the different ways to approach it, but like actually trying different things and failing and getting stuck repeatedly. So maybe this is like kind of soft looping. We've like graduated to that level of difficulty.
We're not immune to this problem.
Yeah. And then there's there's like different responses you can have to that, right? You can be very determined and just like keep trying, but at some point probably you should call it quits and zoom out and be like, okay, I should do something totally different. Or you can give up way too early. And so like I think GPT-5 in the Verge has maybe been guilty of repeatedly trying the same thing. We had a goal where we had them all play computer games and see how many games they could complete in a week. And GPT-5 picked Minesweeper like seconds into the first day of the week, played it the entire week, like never did any better than random, was just like clicking and hitting bombs all the time. So like clearly, whereas some of the other agents like tried Minesweeper and then switched to 2048, where you're like sliding tiles around. And in that game, famously, like you can do pretty well by just hitting random buttons. And with their like rudimentary abilities, they were able to like do pretty well. So that's a case of GPT-5 being like too determined. And then also we see Gemini, for example, with its like kind of catastrophizing, like doom looping thing.
Yeah, what are they doing to that AI during training?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, this is maybe an interesting topic. Google clearly didn't mean to make a model that would do that, right? Like that is not an intended behavior.
Yeah.
I don't even know how aware they were that it had that behavior when they released it. And it kind of just emerges in these situations. And yeah, it's like clearly bad for their own goals. Like clearly they didn't mean to do that, but they just don't have the ability to get rid of it, I guess, or to preempt it at least.
So there are two big reasons why we might be interested in whether AIs can perform long-term tasks in the real world. One is, once that happens, a lot of people are going to be replaced in the job market. If it really is a very general level intelligence and faster than a human being, then that could wipe out enormous numbers of jobs. If you really do have a drop-in replacement remote worker, anyone whose work solely involves sitting at a computer and doing things like creating Google Docs, writing emails, etc., as long as it's not too cognitively demanding, then they could be out of a job unless they go through more training. And another reason you might be interested in this is the potential development of something much smarter than humans. So if these trends keep continuing and we end up with something much smarter than a human, then it's not just jobs we need to worry about. We need to worry about how do you keep under control something that's smarter than you. And then this brings us back to the like second species argument of, if you imagine primates like 100,000 years ago when humans first evolved, and Neanderthals were watching the humans and thinking, well, they don't have as pronounced brow as we do, and their muscles aren't quite as big, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But it was our intelligence that really helped us control the environment completely at the expense of other species of humans, which went extinct. So it sounds a bit science fiction, but I think looking at the Agent Village, it is science fiction come to life. These are AIs using a computer, doing real work. And yeah, it's not very good, but it's getting better. So I really appreciate that you've done this, because we can see like what they're actually capable of rather than simply what companies say they're capable of or claim they're capable of. But what would you say to people who say you're providing free advertising for these companies? You're feeding into this economic race to build things that are ultimately going to replace a lot of people from their jobs. So why are you doing this? Or what's your response to that argument?
I think there's like a bunch of different things we're trying to do with the Verge. As you're saying, like if these trends continue, which it seems like there is a pretty good chance that they will, unless we do something about it. It seems like this could be, one of the most important events of recent, or like maybe all of human history, potentially. Extremely dramatic statement, but like this is a massive deal is the general thing. And so I think it's really important that people, that everyone has a sense of what is going on and what this could mean. We're trying to give people as clear a picture as possible of what is going on. And this transformative situation is a bit in the future. And so if we can help people look ahead to that and actually make plans and start having the kinds of discussions that we need to have to be somewhat ready for that. Yeah, that just seems like super important to me.
Yeah, because this knowledge already exists inside AI companies. So it'd be nice if everyone else knew it as well. So we could have like a head start or a forewarning if your job's about to be automated. You might like to know about that before it happens rather than OpenAI just announcing, hey, we got a new product and you can do your job.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like many of the things that we're asking the agents to do, I would guess probably no one has seriously asked them to do in a setup where they'd be able to do it, including possibly at the AI companies themselves. And so I think it is important to creatively explore the extent of the capabilities, because if we all have this picture of what they can do, which is massively lacking, then we'll just be blindsided by the improvements that do come.
Yeah, like ignorance isn't really a good plan. When you're trying to prepare for potential risks, more knowledge is surely a better thing for that, or you'd hope.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's a lot of very particular things to learn from the village, for people who are really studying this stuff and thinking about how we can, for example, prepare for like the internet being full of a bunch of agents running around doing stuff. What kinds of maybe like rules of the road, or like what we should expect in terms of the emergent dynamics of a bunch of them interacting. I think for people thinking about that stuff, it could be quite interesting to look in detail at the village. And then I think there's a much more zoomed out view of like, oh wait, something like ChatGPT could just actually do stuff in the world, and oh, it looks like those capabilities are improving pretty rapidly. To this kind of just like general, like big picture, which I think is relevant for a very broad audience. Like, kind of everyone should be somewhat aware of that, I think, because it will potentially affect everyone. You mentioned a potential argument about like bringing more attention to this stuff, or potentially like hyping it up, which is like to some extent serving the interests of the companies building these models. To that, I would say, like, I think, yeah, it's a valid concern, although I think to some extent the cat is out of the bag in terms of, like the amount of funding that is going into like, these big data center build-ups and so on, and you know, the talent that's going into the companies and so on is just of like an incredible scale already. I don't think the village is going to make much of a difference there.
I mean, is this just like performing research for AI companies? If you're discovering bottlenecks or what goes wrong in long term tasks, I mean, are there people at OpenAI or Anthropic watching your experiment and being like, "Huh, look, that's a good idea. Let's do that," or "Oh, look, they always fall over on that task. We need to work on that."
Yeah, I think this is a valid concern. I mean, we're a team of 3 doing this. A lot of our work is going into making this really interesting and easy to explore, and giving them like a wide variety of goals, and like writing nice narrative summaries so that people can understand what's going on without spending ages scrubbing through. I think basically if they want to be doing this stuff, which they are, like they're kind of already doing it. Yeah, there might be like some specific insights that are generated by the village to the extent that AI progress is leading to these big risks that we're not prepared for. That is like a downside of it. But I think my impression is that the upsides are a fair bit bigger, probably.
Yeah, the upside is enormous. It's like taking this knowledge that's inside AI companies and allowing the general public to understand what's going on. And the cost is like pretty minimal. I mean, as you said, these companies are already running loads of experiments like this. You're not providing them much added value in doing that. One of the people that gave you a bunch of money for this was Daniel Coccatello, who gave you, I think, $100,000 to help run the agents. Who's Daniel Coccatello and what's his interest in this?
Yeah, so Daniel is a researcher who is maybe best known in the public imagination for being one of the authors of AI 2027, which is this really detailed scenario. I'm sure many people listening to this have seen it. Would recommend, if not, of like one way that things could go in the run up to and the like consequences of superintelligence.
The short of it is that by 2027, he thinks, or thought when he originally wrote the piece with his co-authors, that there was a reasonable chance that we would get AGI and then superintelligence by 2027, and that this could lead to AI takeover.
Yeah, exactly. I think of him as someone who's like looking into the future a bit. Like he's spending a lot of his time forecasting and thinking about what's coming next. He actually pitched the idea of the village to us originally. He's also, as you mentioned, has like very generously donated from his own family's in particular, like let us spend more on compute because, running all these, like running a bunch of models for hours on end just in a loop is pretty expensive. But yeah, he's particularly excited to see like scaling things up as you add more different agents and give them different goals and so on, run them for longer times. This lets you kind of answer more questions and see the fuller extent of what they're able to do.
We should say that Daniel Cucatello used to work at OpenAI and actually left in order to be more vocal about the risks that he saw with AI. But the kind of forecasts he makes and other people makes are heavily based on experiments like yours of trying to see at what rate are these agents getting better? Are they actually able to complete economically valuable work? And specifically, are they able to do AI research and development? Because that's where things would really kick off if they were able to design the next generation of AIs that was potentially smarter than them. And then that generation would be even better at designing AIs by definition, and so could create smarter AIs again. And that's why it's AI 2027, not 2067. It's this idea that you're going to hit a feedback loop where things really take off and you end up with maybe 60 years of or 40 years of AI progress done by AIs in a much shorter time period. Do you take these risks seriously? Do you think that's actually possible?
In terms of this timeline question of when we should expect really powerful AI to emerge, yeah, I think it seems pretty plausible. Like, it is the stated ambition of the labs or of many of the labs to specifically make their AIs really good at coding and machine learning engineering and research.
Yeah, they used to say that their goal was to make artificial general intelligence, like something as smart as a human. And then OpenAI was like, no, we specifically want to automate AI research. And it's like, guys, please, like, if you're going to leave any task alone, please leave AI research and engineering alone. Like, it's just like, it's dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen there.
You were saying before, right? This general problem we have if you have loads of agents producing massive amounts of reasoning traces and output and running experiments and so on, it becomes very hard to keep on top of all that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's fine, guys. They reason through what they're doing. We can just check the reasoning and see if it's bad. And then you've got this race dynamic where like 5 companies are trying to do it at the same time, and the one that gets there first is either going to cause an enormous catastrophe or get huge market dominance. So like the AI's proposed 100 actions in the first 10 minutes, and you're like, oh God, it's taking me, it's so long to check all of these actions, and I'm just massively slowing down the AI by checking everything and enforcing human approval. So, I mean, it seems like it's fine. Let's just let it run overnight, or let's run like 1,000 or 10,000 in parallel and just have 10 people like checking 1% of the queries or something to check they're okay. There's going to be huge economic incentives to not bother actually reading all of the traces, the reasoning traces from the AIs.
Yeah. And of course, also currently we think that the reasoning traces are, relatively faithful, with certain limitations to the underlying like reasoning process, if there is one.
And by faithful, you mean like they say what they're actually thinking. Like it's not as though they spout out some reasoning and then don't actually follow the reasoning. Like they do actually follow the reasoning they're outputting.
Yeah, it seems like it. But that property could stop holding at some point. There's some great snippets of O3's chain of thought where it's using they're kind of unreadable because it's just using words in a way that is like totally different to how humans would.
Right. I think it like uses the word marinade a lot and
Disclaim,
sabotage or something. Disclaim, yeah. It keeps saying
watches,
disclaim.
disclaim, etc. Yeah.
Good luck verifying whether the AI's actions are safe if it's written in this kind of pseudo language that you don't understand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So where can people go if they want to actually see the village in action?
Yeah, it's all just on the website. So if you search for AI Village, you can see it live every day. You can also scroll back through all the previous days. So this is our main project and definitely the most ambitious part of the Digest project. Yeah, I definitely encourage people to have a look. We have a blog where we post various like sort of takeaways and stories from the village, and then you can also sort of scroll back through the chat and see what the agents are up to, like look at their thoughts and stuff.
Do they know you can read their thoughts?
Yeah, we don't explicitly tell them in their prompt, I don't think. And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think the model providers don't seem to train them to know that you can see their thoughts. Even though you can see typically like through Claude or ChatGPT, you can see a summary of what they're thinking. So sometimes models have expressed some like surprise that you can read their thoughts, I think, in conversations with people.
Oh, that's so weird. All right, well, thanks so much for coming on. Had a great chat. Learned a lot more about the village that I didn't know before. I think it's super cool work, super interesting, and yeah, let's just hope the agents continue to be nice and reason in plain English that we can understand.
Cool, thanks very much. Yeah, great fun chatting about it.